Thomas Jackson, a thriving diner proprietor from New York, awoke in the ICU. The room was dim, filled with the beeping of machines that surrounded his body. Felt heavy and weak, and his mind was clouded with confusion as he tried to gather his thoughts. Thomas overheard a voice that made his heart skip a beat. "Yes, darling, it's all set. The will is in my favor," Kelly, his wife, was saying on the phone. "Once he's gone, the diner and all of his money will be ours." Thomas's heart raced as he listened to Kelly's conversation. He pretended to be unconscious, barely cracking his eyes open to see her standing by his bedside, her tone cold and calculating. The realization hit him hard. Kelly was planning to claim his fortune and take over the diner. Worse, she was in league with a lover. As Kelly ended the call, Thomas's mind raced back to the events leading up to his hospitalization. He had suspected Kelly of infidelity for a while. Her late-night outings, secretive phone calls, and sudden disinterest in their marriage were all red flags. But it wasn't until that fateful night that his suspicions were confirmed. Thomas had followed Kelly to a high-end hotel, hoping to catch her in the act. His heart had sunk as he saw her meet a man in the lobby, laughing and holding hands. In his shock, Thomas had driven aimlessly through the city until he ended up in a car accident that nearly took his life. Determined to uncover the truth and reclaim his life, Thomas decided to play along, pretending to be in a coma. He needed to gather strength and plan his next move carefully. As the days passed, he observed Kelly's behavior, her conversations, and her cold disregard for his well-being. One day, a compassionate nurse named Grace came to check on him. Unlike Kelly, Grace's touch was gentle, and her eyes were filled with concern. Thomas felt a flicker of hope. "Grace," he whispered one evening when she was alone in the room. She turned to him startled. "Please don't tell anyone I'm awake. I need your help." Grace's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly nodded. "What do you need, Thomas?" "I need to get out of here," he said, his voice weak but determined. "Kelly is planning something terrible. I have to stop her." Grace looked at him, her face filled with worry. "You're not strong enough yet, but I'll help you. We'll do this carefully." Over the next few days, Grace and Thomas planned his escape. She brought him clothes, helped him practice walking, and found a private driver who could take them to Thomas's home without raising suspicion. One night, when the hospital was quiet, Grace wheeled Thomas out of his room. They moved cautiously, avoiding staff and security. Once outside, Thomas took a deep breath of the cool night air. It was the first time he felt alive in weeks. The drive to his home was tense. Thomas's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. When they finally arrived, Thomas's heart pounded as he approached his front door. He fumbled with his keys, but they didn't fit. Kelly had changed the locks. Undeterred, Thomas rang the doorbell. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal a man in Thomas's robe. Thomas's blood boiled. "Who are you?" the man sneered. "You're not supposed to be here." Before Thomas could respond, Kelly appeared behind the man. Her face paled when she saw Thomas standing there. "Thomas, but you're supposed to be dead," Thomas finished for her. "Not quite, Kelly. You've got some explaining to do." Kelly stammered, trying to cover her tracks. "I thought you were gone, Thomas." "It's not what it looks like." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "Save it. You and your lover have 5 minutes to pack your things and get out of my house." The man stepped forward, trying to assert himself. "Listen, you need to leave." Thomas's gaze was steely. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. Get out." With no other choice, Kelly and her lover hurriedly gathered their belongings and left. As they walked out, Thomas felt a mix of anger and relief. The betrayal cut deep, but he was ready to take back control of his life. Inside, Thomas sat down, his body trembling from the exertion. Grace sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You did it, Thomas. They're gone." Thomas nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "This is just the beginning. I need to rebuild everything they tried to take from me, and I'll need your help." Grace smiled. You have it every step of the way. With Grace's support, Thomas felt a newfound strength. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but he was ready. It was time to reclaim his life, his diner, and his future. Thomas awoke the next morning feeling a mix of exhaustion and resolve. He knew that reclaiming his life and diner would not be easy, but with Grace by his side, he felt hopeful. The first step was to gather the people he trusted the most, Robert the janitor and Laura the dishwasher, who had warned him about the accident. Grace and Thomas made their way to the diner. Thomas moved slowly, leaning on a cane for support, but his eyes were filled with determination. When they arrived, the staff looked shocked to see their boss, who they thought was still in a coma. Whispers filled the air as Thomas and Grace made their way to his office. Robert the janitor was the first to approach them. "Mr. Jackson, is it really you?" "We thought—" "It's me, Robert," Thomas said, offering a weak smile. "I have a lot to explain, but first, I need your help. Can you gather the staff? There's something I need to say." Robert nodded and hurried off to gather the employees. Within minutes, the staff assembled, their faces filled with curiosity and concern. Thomas stood before them, taking a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know this is a surprise, but I needed to see you all first. I want to thank you for keeping the diner running in my absence. It means a lot to me." The staff murmured in response, some nodding in agreement. Thomas continued, "I have recently discovered a betrayal that has shaken me deeply. My wife, Kelly, and her lover planned to take over the diner and my fortune, but with the help of Grace, I was able to uncover the truth and return." Gasps filled the room as the employees exchanged shocked glances. Thomas held up his hand to quiet them. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I need your support now more than ever. Robert, Laura, please step forward." Robert and Laura exchanged surprised looks before stepping forward. Thomas smiled at them. "Robert, you've been with this diner for years, always loyal and hardworking. Laura, you warned me about the accident, and I didn't believe you. I owe you an apology and my gratitude." Laura's eyes welled up with tears. "Mr. Jackson, I was just trying to help." "You did more than help, Laura. You saved my life," Thomas said. "I want to offer you a promotion to assistant chef. Your dedication and hard work deserve recognition." Laura's mouth dropped open in shock. "Assistant chef? Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Thomas confirmed. "And Robert, I need you to continue being the rock of this diner. Your experience and loyalty are invaluable." Robert beamed with pride. "You can count on me, Mr. Jackson." Thomas nodded, feeling a sense of warmth from their support. "Thank you, and there's one more person I need to find. Ben, the homeless man who saved me from the burning car." Grace stepped forward. "I think I know where to find him. He often stays near the old warehouse on 5th Street." Thomas turned to her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Let's go find him." Grace and Thomas left the diner, heading towards the old warehouse district. The streets were rough, and Thomas's condition made the journey difficult, but he was determined. As they approached the warehouse, they spotted a man sitting against the wall, looking tired and worn. "Ben," Thomas called out. The man looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Do I know you?" "It's me, Thomas Jackson. You saved my life," Thomas said, stepping closer. Recognition dawned on Ben's face. "I remembered you. You're the guy from the car accident." "Yes, and I owe you everything," Thomas said. "I want to offer you a job at my diner. You risked your life for me, and I want to repay your kindness." Ben hesitated, looking unsure. "A job? I don't know, man. I haven't had a real job in years." "Please, Ben," Thomas urged. "You deserve a chance to rebuild your life, just like I do." Ben looked at Thomas and then at Grace, who nodded encouragingly. "All right," Ben finally said. "I'll give it a try." Thomas smiled, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you, Ben. Let's go back to the diner. There's a lot to do." As they returned to the diner, Thomas felt a sense of hope and determination. He had the support of loyal friends and a plan to rebuild what was broken. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised resilience, loyalty, and redemption. With Robert, Laura, Ben, and Grace by his side, Thomas knew they could overcome any challenge that lay ahead. With his loyal team assembled, Thomas Jackson felt more confident than ever, but he knew that reclaiming his life in Diner was only the beginning. The betrayal by his wife, Kelly, weighed heavily on him, and he was determined to uncover the full extent of her deceit and bring her to justice. Thomas, Grace, Robert, Laura, and Ben sat together in the Diner office, discussing their next steps. "We need to find concrete evidence of Kelly's involvement in my accident," Thomas said, his voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "We can't let her get away with this, Ben." The streetwise rescuer leaned forward. "I have some connections that might help. There's a private investigator I know who owes me a favor. He might be able to dig up some dirt on Kelly and her lover." Thomas nodded, grateful for Ben's resourcefulness. "That sounds like a good start. Grace, can you stay here and keep an eye on things at the Diner?" "Of course, Thomas," Grace replied, her eyes filled with determination. "I'll make sure everything runs smoothly." Laura chimed in, "And I'll help in the kitchen. We need to keep the Diner thriving while you focus on clearing your name." With a plan in place, Thomas and Ben set off to meet the private investigator. The investigator, a grizzled man named Jack, listened intently as Thomas explained the situation. "So you think your wife and her lover had something to do with your accident?" Jack asked, scratching his chin. "I'm certain of it," Thomas replied. "I just need proof." "All right, I'll start digging. I'll need a few days, but I'll get to the bottom of this." While Jack worked on gathering evidence, Thomas returned to the Diner, determined to keep his life as normal as possible. He immersed himself in the day-to-day operations, working closely with Laura in the kitchen and overseeing Ben's transition into his new role as manager. One evening, as the Diner was winding down for the night, Thomas received a call from Jack. "I've got some information for you," Jack said. "Meet me at my office." Thomas felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach as he drove to Jack's office. When he arrived, Jack handed him a folder filled with documents. "It's all here," Jack said. "Bank statements, phone records, even emails. Kelly and her lover were planning this for months. They set up the accident and were just waiting for you to die." Thomas's hands trembled as he looked through the evidence. It was all there, clear as day. Kelly's betrayal was more calculated and sinister than he had imagined. "Thank you, Jack," Thomas said, his voice heavy with emotion. "This is exactly what I needed." Armed with the evidence, Thomas knew it was time to confront Kelly and bring her to justice. He returned to the Diner where Grace, Robert, Laura, and Ben were waiting anxiously. "We've got the proof," Thomas announced, holding up the folder. "Kelly and her lover are going down." The next step was to take the evidence to the authorities. Thomas, accompanied by Grace, walked into the police station and presented the folder to Detective Harris. The detective listened carefully as Thomas explained everything. "This is some serious evidence," Detective Harris said, flipping through the documents. "We'll launch an investigation immediately, but you should be prepared for a legal battle. Kelly's not going to go down without a fight." Thomas nodded, steeling himself for the road ahead. "I'm ready for whatever it takes to bring her to justice." As the investigation progressed, news of Kelly's betrayal and the evidence against her began to spread. The Diner staff rallied around Thomas, providing him with the support and encouragement he needed. Customers, too, showed their loyalty, flocking to the Diner and expressing their support for Thomas. One afternoon, as Thomas was helping Laura in the kitchen, Grace rushed in holding her phone. "Thomas, you need to see this," she said, showing him a news article. "Kelly has been arrested. The police have enough evidence to charge her and her lover with conspiracy and attempted murder." Thomas felt a wave of relief wash over him. "It's finally happening," he said, his voice shaking. "Justice is being served." That evening, the diner was filled with a sense of celebration. Robert, Laura, and Ben worked tirelessly to keep up with the influx of customers, while Grace and Thomas shared a quiet moment in the office. "You did it, Thomas," Grace said, squeezing his hand. "You stood up to them and came out stronger." Thomas smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. This diner, these people, they're my family now." As the night went on, Thomas felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. He had faced betrayal and emerged resilient, ready to rebuild his life and cherish the loyal friendships he had formed. The battle wasn't over, but with his newfound family by his side, Thomas knew they could face any challenge that lay ahead. The weeks following Kelly's arrest were a whirlwind for Thomas. The legal proceedings were intense, but with the overwhelming evidence gathered by Jack, the private investigator, the case against Kelly and her lover was solid. The court hearings attracted a lot of attention, and Thomas had to relive the pain of betrayal repeatedly. However, he found strength in the unwavering support of his new family at the diner. One morning, Thomas stood in the courtroom, watching as the judge delivered the verdict. Kelly and her lover were found guilty of conspiracy and attempted murder. They were sentenced to long prison terms, and Thomas felt a profound sense of relief and justice. As Thomas left the courthouse, he was greeted by Grace, Laura, Robert, and Ben, who had all come to support him. "It's finally over," Thomas said, a mix of exhaustion and relief in his voice. Grace hugged him tightly. "You did it, Thomas. Justice is served." Back at the diner, the atmosphere was festive. Customers and staff celebrated Thomas's victory and the beginning of a new era. Thomas knew that this was not just about his personal triumph. It was about the resilience and loyalty of the people who stood by him. A few days later, Thomas called a meeting with his core team, Grace, Robert, Laura, and Ben. They gathered in the diner's office, where Thomas had an important announcement to make. "I want to thank each of you for your unwavering support." Thomas began, "This diner wouldn't be standing without you. I've been thinking a lot about the future, and I've decided it's time for some changes." Robert and Laura exchanged curious glances while Ben leaned forward, listening intently. Grace squeezed Thomas's hand, encouraging him to continue. "Robert, your dedication and hard work have kept this place running smoothly for years. I want you to take on more responsibility as the operations manager. Your experience is invaluable." Robert's eyes widened in surprise. "Operations manager, Thomas? I don't know what to say." "Thank you," Robert replied. "You've earned it, Robert. And Laura, your promotion to assistant chef is long overdue. Your talent and dedication deserve recognition." Laura beamed with pride. "Thank you, Thomas. I won't let you down." Thomas turned to Ben. "Ben, your bravery saved my life. I want you to be the new manager. Your street smarts and resourcefulness are exactly what we need." Ben looked humbled. "I don't know if I'm cut out for it, but I'll give it my best shot." "You'll do great," Thomas assured him. "And last but not least, Grace, your compassion and support have been my anchor. I have something important to ask you." Thomas took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Grace, will you marry me?" The room fell silent as Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Thomas, yes, I will." Cheers erupted from the team as Thomas slipped a ring onto Grace's finger. The diner family had come together in the face of adversity, and now they were celebrating a future filled with hope and love. Over the next few months, the diner thrived under the new management. Robert's meticulous attention to detail ensured smooth operations, while Laura's culinary skills brought in new customers. Ben proved to be a natural leader, handling challenges with ease and earning the respect of the staff. Thomas and Grace's wedding was a joyous occasion attended by their close friends and the entire diner family. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, reflecting the journey they had been through together. As they exchanged vows, Thomas felt a deep sense of gratitude for the love and loyalty that had brought him back from the brink of despair. Life at the diner settled into a happy rhythm. Thomas found himself looking forward to each day surrounded by people who cared for him. He had learned that true wealth was not in money or property, but in the bonds of friendship and trust. One evening, as the diner was closing, Thomas sat with Grace, Robert, Laura, and Ben, reflecting on their journey. "We've been through so much together," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have asked for a better family." Robert raised his coffee cup in a toast to resilience, loyalty, and new beginnings. Everyone echoed the toast, clinking their cups together. The past was behind them, and the future was bright. With his newfound family by his side, Thomas knew that they could face whatever challenges came their way. As the night grew darker, the lights of the diner glowed warmly, a beacon of hope and redemption. Thomas looked around at the faces of his friends and felt a profound sense of peace. They had all been betrayed in some way, but together they had found resilience and redemption. The journey had made them stronger and their bonds unbreakable. And so, in the heart of New York, amidst the hustle and bustle of the city, Thomas Jackson and his diner family began a new chapter united by loyalty and love, ready to face the future together.